Are you an agent struggling to understand real estate economics? Would you benefit from learning how top agents structure their businesses? Then you've come to the right place. And welcome to another edition of the Nerdy Agent Podcast, where we teach you the basic economic and business principles you need to thrive in today's real estate market.
Look, they're not basic, okay?
They're pretty basic. We try and
we
keep it basic because you guys get way too non-basic and in-depth and nobody understands when you talk like that. This is our first 2023 podcast. As you can see, we're a little rusty. I'm here with my brothers and fellow nerds, Josh and AJ. What's going on, guys?
It's snowing a lot.
It's snowing a lot.
So much. I'm looking right now. That snowbank out in the parking lot is 15 feet high.
My snowblower literally has nowhere to send snow anymore. Like on one side of I have to blow it all the way across because there's out of room. There's so much snow.
So the cool thing about this snowfall, though, was that it was also actually kind of warm out. So the snow was super easy to compact and stay together. So last night, me and Kaylin made a 5-foot snowman.
It's pretty cool. You want to know a fun new game that I created with my kids?
Yes.
Snowball fight versus snowblower fight. So they would run at me and throw snowballs. They tried to sneak up on me while I was snowblowing, and I just turned around and blasted them.
I don't know. I feel like
the snowblower.
I feel like if I had snowballs and you had a snowblower, I'd win because I'd be way more nimble.
But you can't throw as far as my kids can. So.
I can throw as far as you can. Farther. Let's get into the would you rather.
Have you seen my kids throw, okay?
The would you rather of the week is based on when the 2022 spring market was really competitive. There were multiple offers everywhere. And the question is, would you rather have been a contingent buyer, but the house, so contingent on the sale of your home, but the home you were going to sell was $300,000, so theoretically it was going to be pretty easy, or a strong buyer that wasn't contingent, so 20% down, but they wanted an inspection?
And in different markets. That was the key to this. So in today's market, would you rather be a contingent buyer in today's market, just like good credit standard, but you needed a contingency? Or someone who wanted an inspection in the 2022 market in the spring when it was chaos, when you basically, what we say, 48% of homes sold without inspections. I'm curious. What do you guys think?
I'm taking the 2022 market just because I like the interest rate.
No, it's like...
That's fair. It's a fair point to make.
I know that's not where you wanted this question to go. I know you didn't want that question to go that way, but I wanted the three.
Let's say interest rates were the same.
Same interest rate?
Yeah.
Then I would take today's market because I think I'll be able to negotiate more.
That seems fair.
I think I'd still rather take the other market where I still have to maybe overpay a little bit or be more aggressive. I don't know, selling with the contingency is a pain. So if I'm a buyer, I'd rather avoid the contingency either way. But it is a good question because right now you can get a better deal. And actually we've been selling houses with contingencies now, whereas in the spring market it was basically saying if you put a contingent offer out there, you had no chance.
This is the toughest would you rather we've had.
They're very close.
They're very close. The only thing that would swing me is the interest rate.
Hey, do you want to hear another would you rather non-real estate related?
Let's do it.
So today Kyle Knutson texted me. Shout out to Kyle Knutson, past teammate of mine. He said, having a debate with my friends, would you rather dive in the 5.5 hole and throw to first base, make a play as a shortstop, or dive up the middle and get up and throw to first base and make a play?
Up the middle.
I'd like to dive up the middle and spin, actually, and then stand.
That's exactly my answer. He says, but a spin is not a dive. And I said, I don't care. That's what I choose.
Once you get up, you can spin.
It's the feet first slide spin throw. Yeah, it's the best play in baseball.
That's my favorite play. You're going with your glove side.
Yeah, it's so great.
I think staying on your feet is even better, though, and spinning and jumping.
You know what the worst part?
That's not a dive. He literally asked you which one would you rather dive to.
I know.
The worst part, not to get too in-depth in baseball, we could probably do a baseball podcast. The worst part when you feet first slide trying to spin is when your left shoulder dislocates. And that has happened to me, and that makes it a little scary to do from now on.
I think the reason why everyone knows baseball is hearing us answer this way is because they're learning that we didn't have super strong arms. So everyone that has a super strong arm probably would love to dive in the hole.
Speak for yourself.
And they'd love to throw it 1,000 miles.
If I was Carlos Correa, I'd be diving in the hole every time.
All right. And Haley is probably going to make us restart this podcast.
Nope, we're going to keep going. Let's get into the topic of the week. So this week, we are going to talk about home renovations and projects. That is, we're going to discuss the different options you have for each space and then the different types of estimates on cost depending on you do it yourself, you pay somebody, what the paybacks might be. The cool thing is that we do have resident expert AJ Pettersen, who runs a lot of house projects in general, so he knows the costs And
Insert clapping
he does
sound.
a lot of DIY stuff, so he's going to be able to help us out. He knows this stuff in and out. From a high level, though, just for real estate agents out there, let's just say, why is this important for them to understand cost of something? You walk into a kitchen, what it's going to cost to paint these cabinets, how hard it might be for the clients to do that themselves, or pay somebody to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to start with the reality that when you look up payback on investment in a house project, so if you look at Remodelers Magazine, for example, does a survey where they look at like what kind of return do you get on an investment. Nothing comes back with over 100% on return on investment. So you're putting money into your house, but you're not getting 100% of it back in pretty much every scenario. Now, as real estate agents, we advise clients in certain ways to do updates to their house before they sell. Those are a little more nuanced than like a kitchen remodel. We're not walking through a house and saying, hey, you should do a kitchen remodel, right? But it kind of pays back the concept or reinforces the concept that your primary residence is not really an investment. It's an asset that over time will appreciate, but does require uptake and energy to make sure that happens. That said, we all know that when you don't update your house, the process for selling it is much more complicated. So if you ever go into a listing or you go in to look at a house that's not updated, some people can see past that, but a lot of people just want the work done. They don't want to deal with the headache. So spending time and energy on your house both will help you sell more quickly, will help you get a higher price, and frankly is going to help you enjoy your place more in most cases. So if you spend $10,000, $15,000 on a bathroom, but you're only going to get $10,000 out of that $15,000, that $5,000, see that as an investment in your emotional enjoyment of that space over the next 10 years.
The line I like to use a lot with people is, you maybe aren't, so $15,000 bathroom renovation, you're going to get $10K out. You're maybe not going to get more than you put in out, but it's definitely going to make it easier to sell.
Yes.
You may even go from not being able to sell it to being able to sell it, which makes a huge difference when putting a house on the market.
Yep.
Well, and if it was like full of mold before, you might get a lot more than it's going to cost you to do it.
That's
right?
true.
So I think every situation is different, right? I think on an average, your point's correct, right? Like on average, you do a kitchen, you're not getting 100% of the money back out of that. But in specific scenarios, I do think from a micro basis, you can do pretty well with remodeling.
Correct. And that's why we walk around in houses with clients that we will point out things that are actually worth the return on investment. So yeah, if your carpet is 40 years old and it's terrible, but you've just learned to live with it, the next person that walks through is not going to see that as a value add. And for $1,500 replacing that carpet, it's going to be worth it to you.
Well, and to be frank, like our properties we buy and renovate, that we've talked about on the podcast before, are typically about 150% return on the amount of money we're spending for the remodel, right? When we look at it from purchase price, remodel, future value.
Yeah.
So there are ways to do it. It's just, again, I think a lot of people don't understand if you're hiring a general contractor and you're, paying the fees to manage the whole thing and all of that, it gets to be a lot more complex in most situations to get close to even a one-to-one return.
It also does depend on the condition of the room or bathroom or kitchen before you started the project. For like the houses we renovate are just about not livable a lot of the time before the project starts. Where a kitchen that's decently nice and not that bad, if you just rip all the cabinets out, you're not going to get as much return.
Correct. Most people want those certain things to look a certain way, and they'll spend money on stuff that probably doesn't need to be fixed. But I think one reason why this is an important topic is that as an agent, having an understanding of how these things work, how much they cost, potential return on investments is hugely important, and in timelines and how to do it, right? Like, you're going to gain a lot of credibility with the client when you're walking around a house like, I don't like that kitchen. Like, well, you could do this, this, and this, and it will cost you this much, right? Like, being able to be that source for them is adding value beyond what most agents are adding for them. And so it allows you to gain credibility and add more value for your clients. So learn it.
It's back to the point of understanding houses, right? I think I may have told this story before, but until I bought our most recent vehicle, I had never been to a dealership and bought a car where they sat in the car with me and showed me how to use the car afterwards. I was like, you realize that most car salesmen or women versus real estate agents, they're the same thing, right? Like, they're just trying to sell a product, but they don't even necessarily know that much about that product, right? And so we've really prided ourselves on understanding the actual product that we're selling, and if this breaks or if you wanted to do this to it, here's kind of what you can expect.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's great. So for this episode, what I want to do is go through the different areas of the house, starting on the outside, and kind of just go one by one and talk through the different options with contractors, without contractors, doing it yourself. I want to start on the exterior, so siding, gutters, roof, deck, and what that looks like.
You want to start on the exterior? It's a lot of. This would be a 4-hour long podcast.
Sure, and I think
we'll try to narrow it down.
we might throw out some numbers too.
Just random numbers.
Luke's got some percentages and dollar figures on here.
I'd like to make it known that this is Josh putting the percentages in dollars.
So
don't claim them.
Siding, there is a long-standing debate between James Hardie siding and LP siding, at least here in Minnesota. LP is a wood product. It's like a composite. James Hardie siding is actually made of concrete. Yeah, so you have to saw it with a angle grinder to cut it, which makes it a lot more labor intensive.
This is going to be a 4-hour podcast.
Yeah, so that's the most expensive product you most likely will do. I know we're not going to include like stucco or specialty brick and weird things like that. Here, most expensive homes, $1 million homes in Minnesota are doing LP or Hardie siding. He has 2,000 square foot house is going to cost you around $20,000.
Maybe a little bit more.
That's probably pretty accurate right now, 20 to 25. Vinyl is, roughly half the cost of that. The key difference between the two products, obviously, being that when there's a hailstorm, which we get a lot of here in Minnesota, it will look like someone shot a shotgun at your house if you have vinyl siding, and the LP and the Hardie will just shed it right off.
And the LP and Hardie is paintable.
Correct.
And lasts way longer, even
and has better
without hail.
The factory finish is 50 years on the LP,
which is pretty awesome.
It's something that I think, when you think about it, some people are mixing too, right? So some people will do LP on the front or Hardie on the front, and then they'll wrap the sides in vinyl, back in vinyl.
Save some money.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it, but there's different options you can use. If you're talking about a full siding repair on a nicer house, I usually tell people it tends to be worthwhile to spend a little bit extra money on siding.
From an investment standpoint, typically you're not going to get the money back on siding. That's going to be one of the worst ones, depending on how bad it obviously
is. It depends. I mean, so the curb appeal, it can be drastically improved. So we had old, really bad cedar shakes on our house that I thought looked terrible, and so we replaced the house in LP and then changed out the shutters, and I think it did some meaningful difference in terms of curb appeal, but it's a lot harder to qualify what that would mean to a buyer other than, I like the way that my house looks when I drive towards it.
That's totally fair. Yep, we did ours in LP too. So same neighborhood.
What do you got for gutters and roof?
Gutters are pretty cheap. Like, you typically aren't going to spend more than like $3,000 to do gutters. I actually tell clients, especially like new construction clients, that's where it usually comes up. They say, well, is the builder going to put gutters on? And I say they don't really like to do gutters because if you don't clean your gutters and then you get an ice dam, and then now it's like, who's responsible for fixing this problem now that I just built this house? But I tell people buying new construction to live in their house for 1 year, watch how the snow melts off their roof, where it goes, what makes dangerous spots, watch how the rain sheds off. Like, if you wanted to be grilling and it starts raining, do you want to have make sure that the water's not just running right on top of your head?
How much your sump pump runs?
Right? So gutters are for water management and for safety here in Minnesota. Some people have roof lines like I have, where if the snow was to melt off my garage, it would create a very slick spot right out in front of where we park our cars, or get our cars into the garage. So they're very worthwhile, I think, in the long run, because gutters aren't going to improve like how your house looks, and they're not
unless you get copper gutters.
They're
very different price,
but they're also like they're more of a functionality thing than anything. They will make your house worth probably a lot more money than you're going to spend on them, because you're not going to induce the water damage
into the inside
of your house.
In terms of, it will cause less problems. If you're selling a house, I'm not going to walk through and tell a client to put some gutters on, because you're not getting anything for that.
That would be pretty silly.
The roof is kind of the same thing, right? So most roofs, I would say roofs are the one thing where you're getting it from the insurance company more often than anything else, right? So the one thing the insurance company pays for more than anything is a roof. But if you had to pay for a roof out of pocket, the value it feels like clients are giving to a house that has an old roof versus a new roof is like pretty infinitesimal, right? It's like minimal, right? So it's...
Most of my clients will get to the point of wanting to make an offer before they even know how old
the roof is.
Especially in the winter when the snow's on it. Like, how old was the roof again? I'm like, it's 15 years. Like, how long is it supposed to last? I'm like, maybe another 5 or maybe 1 hailstorm.
And that's what... But like, even if you didn't say that and they're like, oh shoot, I have an old roof that's going to be $20,000, like, I bet insurance will cover it. Like, if you ever were paying for a roof out of pocket to try to improve the property value, you're not getting anything.
Not doing it.
It'll make your insurance cheaper. That's about it.
And decks.
So we have some average numbers here. It really, really depends on
the
what
size.
Kind of deck the size, but also where you're building a deck. If you've got like Josh has a full basement, so his deck just steps out right off of his back patio door.
No steps.
A lot cheaper to do it that way.
Yep.
Some of them, I don't even know, is yours attached to the house?
Yep.
It is attached to the house. Some of them in that scenario are not attached to the house. They don't even have necessarily have footings on them, so because it's not required if it's not attached. Whereas like I have a walkout, so I have 8-foot posts holding up my deck.
Yep.
Way more expensive to build it that way.
Yep.
It's harder to build it that way. It's more dangerous. They have to like take way more steps to do things. So I think the key difference here is that building it out of wood, cedar, is typically in a normal year much cheaper than building it with like a Trex material. Trex is kind of like Kleenex, by the way, guys. Do you know
Composite.
But it's kind of like Kleenex.
It's a brand.
It's brand.
Yeah, it's a brand. It's funny. Everybody says, "Oh, it's Trex," and I'm like, "Nah, it's not Trex." I have Ultra Deck on my house, which is Menards Trex, basically. Yeah. But yeah, you can spend upwards of $75,000 on a deck if you want to. It really depends on if you're doing like an under deck, so you're doing water management. What is what footing style are you using? The old school style of a spread footing? Are you doing diamond pier footing? Are you doing piers, like helical piers? There's just so many ways you can go. I think the average like normal sized composite deck, you're probably spending $40,000 to $60,000 right now. Yeah. Back in 2020, they were about the same price.
Yep.
Which was weird because lumber was so short. But yeah, cedar decks, you can get a nice cedar deck done for probably $30,000 now.
But I think it's important to call out that price because that surprises most of my clients. And I'm like, so think about paybacks, right? We're talking about, is it worth the ROI? A lot of times deck is not on that list as worth the ROI. It adds value to the house, but it's not going to add as much as it's going to cost you. And hence the reason why new construction houses almost never put decks on. They just have an open door that you can fall out and die from. But
They have a block there.
There's a block there. Yeah. Okay.
Can't open it.
People will not assign the value of the cost of the deck to the deck, and so oftentimes I'm offering on a house right now that doesn't have a deck. I'm like, just be prepared. You have a minimum of $25,000 to put a new deck on here. Fencing, similar deal, right? Fences are crazy expensive right now if you're going to do a big new wood fence. It adds value. People want a fence. But it's kind of like a checkbox. Does it have one? Does it not? Oh, I'll put in a fence. They don't realize it might be $20,000 to put in a fence or $15,000 to put in a fence. So that's just kind of how exterior in general, you probably don't get a ton of bang for your buck.
Let's get into the fun stuff, the inside of the house. Where most of the clients want to be, especially in the winter, they don't even look at the outside of the house. They just walk right in through the front door and say, I want to get warm. It's too cold out here. So you walk in the house.
Make the front of your house look nice and the rest of it doesn't matter.
in Minnesota, yeah. So you walk in the house, the basic big items first. I want to talk about the paint for the walls and the trim, and then also just the floors in general, and then we'll go room by room.
I think paint is the most shocking cheap investment you can make on a house. Yep. It will completely change how the house even feels, especially going from like a dark to a light color, or vice versa. Painting and updating like old orangey oak trim is like unbelievable how much better it looks. Yeah, I mean, to paint a 2,000 square foot house, yeah, we've got $5,000 to $7,000 on here. I'd say that's probably the price for like ceilings and walls, maybe a touch higher. I think we get a pretty good deal on some
trim. Trim is the paint. Expensive. That's what starts to run your cost up on paint.
Yeah, painting cabinets or painting trim is a lot more expensive, mostly because there's an incredible amount of prep to do that. If you ever watch a professional painter actually paint a house, if they're painting walls, sometimes they don't even need to tape stuff off. They just have one guy go cut in the trim in the ceiling, and then they just roll the walls really quick, and they can knock it out super fast, just move their drop cloths around. To do trim, you have to like tape it all off, wear a big hazmat suit, get the paint, spray it, and you have to prep all the little nail holes, do all the caulking before. So it just is really, really involved. Yeah. And it's probably not a DIY thing unless you're Luke.
I was going to say, if you do feel, I don't want to think that our clients aren't able to do DIY projects, right? I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. If you think you're decent and can go slow and watch YouTube videos and try and figure this out, you theoretically don't even need to spray all of that, right? I have seen good, well done roll-on paint on cabinets. It's not as great, but it can be done decently.
Emily's really good friend from high school hand painted with a brush all of the trim in a 3,300 square foot home in Woodbury over like 3 years.
How'd it look?
Awesome.
It's doable. Exactly.
It was
doable.
Awesome. But you need to know what you're doing, and you got to buy the right paint.
Yep. But it's doable. I will say paint is one of those things though that, especially walls, let's say away from cabinets even, something you can do yourself for the cost of the paint, and it can make a big difference.
And go to Sherwin-Williams when you're buying your paint.
Home Depot has good paint too.
Eggshell?
Sherwin-Williams has the best paint. And make sure you have a contractor discount because it's a lot less. But the reason the paint is so much more expensive too on the spray is that paint is actually like 4 times as expensive as a regular wall paint.
You also use significantly more. That when you're spraying it, it just disappears.
Just let it rip.
Yeah, it just disappears from that thing. So outside of paint, let's get into floors.
Yeah, so flooring like really, really depends on what kind of flooring you're gonna do. And this is we could really get in depth with a lot of different things.
Let's stick with LVP and carpet and hardwood.
Okay, so carpet's typically gonna run you like $3 to $4 installed for like a pretty decent carpet. Mm-hmm. You could do it for probably $250 for a crappier carpet, or you could spend $7 for like a really high-end Berber
Question
carpet.
becomes, what's your purpose, right? So like when we bought our house, we were going to live there for 15 years, so we invested a little bit more in higher-end carpets because they would last longer.
Like $550 or $6.
$550 a square foot to buy it, and then the installation on top of that. So it's like $7 probably.
Yeah.
But if I have a client who's also listing their house right now, and so they're like, where should you get really nice carpet for the next person? Like, they're not going to necessarily see a major difference, and you can get like $2 to $3 a square foot carpet that's really nice. So that's what we invested in. It looks great.
And I do think the payback on carpet's pretty decent if you're selling your house, because if you have old from 2000 walked on for 20 years carpet,
this was a very good investment for them.
It makes sense to have new carpet because they walk in and they go, oh, it's new carpet. It feels way different.
It made a basement go from looking like you didn't want to be down there to looking like a place you wanted to hang out just for a couple $1,000.
I think the big thing is like too, like, I mean, I'm sure you have it too, where like the kids have stained it or they've like snagged up little spot like
animals,
over time.
Staircases that just get worn.
They get wrecked.
Yep, it makes a huge difference.
Yep.
Okay, and then LVP, or EVP. That's what Luke has in his basement.
Executive.
We're gonna do LVP.
Engineered.
Oh, that's executive vinyl.
Engineered. If any DIYers out there like LVP floors, just Google engineered vinyl planks. They literally don't warp. They tested them, put them in a water bucket for a month, and nothing happened.
Yeah, you could put it.
They're 100% waterproof.
They don't swell.
Go LVP.
So here in Minnesota, LVP is a great product because, like Luke said, it does not swell or warp. So you can get snow all over it and melt all over the floor, and it'll just dry right up, basically. There's a huge range of quality when it comes to vinyl, laminate, all these options. Shaw makes a great product called Cortec. That's what me and Luke. I have it at my cabin. Luke has
the engineered
in
stuff.
his basement.
Lifeproof is one of the bigger LVP companies.
Lifeproof's a Home Depot brand. And they're, the Lifeproof stuff's probably in that like $2 to $4 range. You can get $1 per square foot. Sorry, you can get $1 LVP too. Just know that the amount of money you spend on it will make a huge impact. Like if you want really good floors that are going to last a while, but also that are going to be easier to install, especially if you're doing a DIY. Like the stuff that we have. Boo, Lou.
I muted it. I don't know. I muted it before we started.
You didn't mute. So when you're installing LVP, if any of you have ever done this, you buy the cheap stuff and you'll pull out a board and it'll like have a little bit of a bow in it.
Yeah. Or and the little connector will be cracked.
So like if the fins are busted or they're not straight, it's impossible to lay it. So you want to throw it away.
You want to be between $2 and $4 for LVP. I tell everybody that, don't buy the cheaper stuff.
My pitch too on this, and I'm the old man in this room. I'm the oldest. I'm the one who's most opposed to LVP and most prefers hardwoods, and I'll be that person probably forever.
We all have hardwood in our house.
No, I know, but you guys are all okay with the reality of where we're moving in the world of putting in LVP in all of these houses.
I like hardwood.
I strongly prefer hardwoods, but whatever. The one thing I will say is the same exact floor has been used in so many houses in the last 2 years. The light grayish LVP from Home Depot. You know which one I'm talking about if you're an agent because you've seen it. Be thoughtful about which one you choose, because even if it's better quality and you're paying a little bit more, the fact that your house will look different than every other person who's DIY'd their floors in the last 2 years will make a difference in terms of the perceived quality of your home.
If you are doing it right now and you're going to put your house on the market, your opinion might matter, but I'm looking at something that tries to get as close to white oak as possible.
Yeah, if you want to look up the one that Josh if you want to look at the one that Josh is talking about, it's probably called weathered oak.
Yeah, it is weathered oak.
And it is gray, and it looks like old farmhouse floor.
And it's literally in like every house where someone replaced flooring, it feels like. And so you just create this ubiquitous look, and it almost looks like a little bit like a flip.
Yeah.
Because everyone's using, or like you DIY'd it.
Do we want to start an affiliate link this week and pitch for Calypso Oak? Calypso Oak, Cortec, it is the best floor.
Engineered vinyl plank. That's engineered vinyl plank. That is not hardwood.
No, that's LED.
So I want to then get into, I want to talk about hardwood though, rough cost. So you buy a 50s house, right? It's got hardwood on the main level mostly, right? And it's got some carpet, you rip the carpet up, there's hardwood underneath. What's our cost to sand down, refinish, paste and mate? This is the one thing, preface this with.
We should put carpet over hardwoods, right? That's what we should do.
No.
When was that a conversation where they're like, we should do this hardwood, we should cover it up?
When we were at people that are twice our age, that's exactly what they did.
I know. It's crazy.
You got to get back. Pull it back.
No, we're pulling it back. We're going.
The one thing, I'm big on DIY. I already said I think people can figure out how to paint cabinets if they try hard enough. I've had people do it and they've done a pretty good job. You can do it if you want. It's the one thing that I suggest. It makes sense to pay somebody. They are significantly better. I wouldn't touch hardwood floors myself, and I've done a lot of different DIY stuff. But what's the cost look like for something like that?
If you're gonna add on like the 1.5-inch oak like we do, typically we're spending anywhere from 12 to 13 to install and finish.
Yeah, let's say it's already there. Yep.
If it's already there, we're spending like low 3s if we don't put a stain on it, and we're spending closer to 4 if we put a stain on it per foot.
And that stuff can be sanded and stained many times.
Brand new.
So durable.
For agents, the big thing to know is that if you are in a house and your client says, I want to remove those carpets, there's hardwood underneath, and you say, oh, it'll be $4 a square foot. Make sure you mention that in the middle of that carpet where you can't see right now, there might be this just big spot where there's just a piece of plywood, and they're going to have to patch that in. It's not just going to be a straightforward $4.
There was a plant that they had there that they watered for years.
And then the hardwood wrecked. Yeah.
Also, the fun tip that our team always uses, I think AJ showed me this when I first started, but if you ever want to know what the floors look like, go to one of the grates, pull the grate up in the main area. You can see the HVAC vent. You can see the thickness of the floors. You can see what type of floors they are. If you're struggling to figure out if there are hardwoods under something, you can pull up carpets in the corner of like bedroom closets. Or if you can get into those HVAC grates, you can actually be like, yep, there are hardwood floors under this. I can see them. So good tip.
The last general house item on here, which is quickly becoming one of my favorites, is electrical fixtures. Because I do think, not sure on the liability of suggesting people to do this, make sure you turn off the electrical panel first. But it is wiring, black to black, green to green, red to red, screen into the ceiling. It's really not that hard. Tell us about electrical fixtures.
Yeah, we get all of our electrical fixtures on Wayfair. We'll insert our affiliate link. They're really, really affordable. I mean, we can usually get a nice bedroom fixture, so just like a semi-flush mount for like $100. And like Luke said, if you're feeling super DIY and you want to do it yourself, it's free for the labor.
Turn off the power to the entire house.
I mean, you could just hit the switch.
I have to say that.
Most people, I say, if they don't seem like they're handy or they don't know someone that's done this before, I'm like, you should just hire an electrician. It's way safer.
Yep. And electricians are surprisingly affordable compared to other
It's not that much for this, yeah.
$300 to $500, they'll come for half a day, and they could change out every fixture in your entire house.
Yep.
We honestly, when we redid our whole house, we spent like maybe $1,200 to do all the bedrooms, all the can lights, all the vanity lights.
It just compared to how expensive everything else is, electrical is actually surprisingly affordable.
And it does make, it makes a huge difference. Like we added this like chandelier looking thing in our front entryway, and you walk in, you're like, wow, this is way nicer than it was before.
Super nice.
Yeah.
Yep. I like it. I also, big thing, there's, again, and we're talking about paybacks, you're not going to get huge payback from that, but a lot of people, like for the amount of cost, sometimes it does make sense. The one that I like to do, I guess it's just a thing that I enjoy in houses now, is to do what's called a re-device. And again, I don't think long term this is going to give you a huge payback, but it makes the house have so much more continuity when you put brand new outlets. And when you do that, the new code is tamper proof. So if you have kids, they can't stick like a knife in there anymore. It will not shock them. And the switches are way firmer. It just makes a really big difference.
Do you want to know how you're old? Like how people become old? I walked home the other day after my electrician was through the house, and he had installed a new sub panel because my panel was so full that it had double tap breakers everywhere. And walking up to the sub panel and looking at it, and the joy that I felt when I knew my double taps had moved, and that I had a new sub panel that had like 12 open slots in it for future stuff, the amount of joy I felt was like, I am clearly.
Not to mention, those old cream outlets are so ugly. We have them all over our house. I haven't gotten to replacing any of them because it just looks not fun.
But for anyone who's creative too, like we put new switches on our fireplaces. That's been a huge help, and that cost $200. We put a new fan in on our porch, and we put, I don't know. I agree with you. Electricians are great.
let's get into some of the bigger remodels specifically. So let's start in the kitchen.
Sorry, Haley, we're going kind of long here.
This is going to be a long one today,
really
folks.
important one.
Stick with
Haley.
us.
It's a 45-minute podcast.
Stick with us. We're going to start in the kitchen. First, I want to start with what are the cheapest things you can do in the kitchen to freshen it up outside of painting the cabinets? We already talked about that.
Yeah, hardware. A lot of kitchens don't have any hardware, and I'm talking pulls and knobs. These can range from $1 to $5 per. You can buy a jig at the same time and
If you
install.
go to Anthropology, they're like $43.
Pottery Barn or West Elm. Amazon has them, 25 packs, like super easy to find. You can get really nice looking ones. If you have a jig with the right size, especially if you have pulls that you want to get both holes to line up really well.
If you are installing pulls, you need a jig. Do not install poles without a jig. It will look worse than it would.
Google that if you don't know.
A jig is a plastic thing that you slip over the corner of the door so you know that you're screwing them in the exact same spot every single time. That makes a massive difference. Countertops are another one. And again, this is when I talk about, like we talked about earlier, if you have clients that are like, ugh, I hate these countertops, that is a red flag to me. If they're like a granite, that's a red flag to me to say there better be a lot of other things in a house like this that my client's gonna wanna buy, because a lot of people are gonna put a lot of quality value on just having granite countertops.
Yep.
So that's one where I say, well, if you don't like those, I mean, you're paying for them.
Yep.
So if you rip them out, you just paid $5,000.
It's a great line, though, as you think about talking to clients, right? It's like, if you don't like stuff that's already expensive, it's not probably the house for you to buy because you're paying for it and then you're replacing it.
It's something that you're paying for and it's not bringing you any
value.
Utility.
Yep. Oh, there you go. Nice.
That's my favorite word. So countertops are a big deal. They typically are going to range from $30 to $50 a square foot from our guy for granite. And then they're going to be like maybe $40 on the bottom for the cheapest quartz you can possibly find to Cambria. 150 maybe.
Yeah.
Silestone makes a really high quality quartz countertop. Insert affiliate link for Silestone here. I think we paid like $80 to $90 a square foot at our house. Cool. And they're very, very nice.
Yeah.
New appliances?
This really depends. Typically an appliance package on like for our house, for instance, I think in the kitchen we probably paid like $5,000.
Yeah, 4 to 6 is usually I say for
Samsung. For our rentals, we pay like $3,000 to $3,500.
It depends, though, right? Like, as an agent, you should know all this stuff, right?
Also depends on what's available.
And if you're selling luxury houses, you got to know the brands of all these appliances because you're going to have a Wolf or you're going to have a Sub-Zero.
Well, the house I just sold in Eden Prairie has Wolf and Sub-Zero. I'm like, that's a $10,000 range. That's a $12,000 refrigerator. It's a $4,000 dishwasher.
Whoa.
It's a $2,000 Advantium microwave that's built into the island.
Whoa.
So that's a $25,000 appliance package,
Yep.
you know. So things can go up a lot.
But if you, like, depending on what you sell, knowing brands will make you sound more knowledgeable. So just another fun fact you can have. If you're going to try to sell $1 million house, make sure you understand what type of appliances they'll probably have.
Look out for the red knobs.
100%.
Yeah. Red knobs.
Also then, kitchens, full kitchen reno. Let's say we're ripping out the whole thing, replacing. So this is all within that package. Like, what are we depending?
What is that
I
going to
know
cost?
it's tough.
I can do a kitchen. Estimates. I can do a kitchen right now that I manage myself for around $20,000 in St. Louis Park. Small house. If you were going to hire a general contractor for that project, you're probably looking more like $40,000, $50,000. At least. If you're trying to do like the kitchen we have now, and you're trying to do it custom, like we could for sure spend over $100,000 on that kitchen.
Some people spend over $200,000 on their kitchen.
The kitchen that I was just speaking about was $220,000.
Yeah.
So, but that might include like moving windows and fixing out like the siding. That might include all new flooring.
Mm-hmm.
When you start to get into it, oftentimes I have clients ask about kitchens like, can I remove this wall? That's like the biggest question I get, right? Is this a load-bearing wall? Can I remove this? I'm like, you can remove whatever you want with money. Like with money, anything is pretty much possible. And the actual removal of a wall in a kitchen is not that big of a deal. It's more so everything that happens after that. Mm-hmm. So you've now, like I did in my St. Louis Park house. Now I've got a spot on the floor that I've got to like try to match the stain to the rest of the flooring. Mm-hmm. I've got HVAC that I've got to move, and that's not super easy when the basement's finished. And I need to get this plumbing vent in here, and I need to get the electrical out of like. There's just you open up a can of worms when you do something.
I like this line because it's not that you need to have all the answers as a real estate agent while standing in that house at that exact moment on what it's going to cost them to do it. It's that you can point things out that they don't know.
Yep.
So they're like, I want to remove this. What's that going to cost? And you go, well, I can't give you like an exact cost of a kitchen remodel or a wall because it depends on who you use, when you use them, what type of stuff you buy. But I can tell you that outlet's going to have to move, that HVAC vent's going to have to move, all this floor is going to have to be patched. And then all of a sudden, these things that they weren't able to see.
Put a beam here.
Plumbing vents are the biggest one that people have, like, because HVAC comes from the floor, right? Or the B vent, right? So heat comes from down below you, right? Mm-hmm. The plumbing lines all come from down below you. The electrical is all coming most of the time from down below. The plumbing stack is going up. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes they say, want to take this wall? And I'm like, well, you do know your sink's in that wall. And they're like, well, yeah. All the plumbing for my sink. I'm like, well, it goes up. So how are we going to get it to go up again? Mm-hmm. What do you mean? And then you show them the straw and the water thing, and then it's like they start to understand, like, you're opening a can of worms, start moving this wall. It's going to be very expensive.
But the note there is that being able to point this stuff out, not necessarily knowing the exact cost because you're not going to, but pointing stuff out is going to be important to be the expert here. I want to get into bathrooms before Haley just stops the video and cuts us off.
We can make it a two-parter, right? We can make it a two-parter.
Part 1. Should we do a two-parter?
Yeah, let's do it.
That's great.
So we should cut here.
No, keep going.
Oh, keep going.
Cut
it into two. We're going to talk about bathrooms next. I want us to do partial bathroom renovation, so toilet, vanity, paint, flooring, and then I want to do full, ripping it all out to the plumbing.
Oof. How much do they cost?
Start with partial, yep.
Oh, can I give one other line that I've heard AJ use and I've stolen it, but it's like, how much is this going to cost to fix? And this question, the statement is, it's a wide range because a lot of it depends on the quality of the finishes that you're going to pick. You can spend $20,000 in this kitchen, or you can spend $100,000 in this kitchen. A lot of that is up to you on how you want to finish it. So you're giving them ranges, but you're also like, if I was to say like it'd be $35,000 to do a kitchen, right? And I wanted to do that a lot when people were asking those questions when I was earlier on, but actually giving them more of a range tends to actually make them trust you more because you're basically saying like, you can do a lot of different things. So it's actually inappropriate of me to give you a true number.
You know what's funny is one of them we didn't touch on was windows. And Kyle Knutson's getting his second shout out of the podcast here because he's a client of mine. He reached out to me at a
very expensive
executive style home from the 90s. He says, hey, I'm about to think about getting new windows. I'm going to reach out to some companies. How much do you think it's going to cost me? And I said $30,000 to $100,000. And he said, no way. And I said, yep, get like 4 bids. I bet you get almost that big of a range. And he got like 35 from like the cheapest, crappiest window company. And then Anderson was like $98,000.
But those Anderson windows are really nice.
So he did the middle road. I think he got like a nice Marvin or something, and it was like $50,000 to $60,000.
Yeah.
But seriously, I said that, and then it actually happened, and he was like, "You actually called this," you know. So it's kind of funny. But bathrooms, partial reno versus full reno, what that looks like. God, it just really depends because like if you're doing a master or a primary suite, it could be like. You could spend, like I've had clients get bids for 80, 90, 100,000 because they're moving plumbing around and they're moving windows.
This is for full.
Very high end.
Renovation.
Now if you're doing, a general contractor comes in and you've got your standard like single sink toilet tub and they're just gutting it and putting it back together, I'd say 20 to 30,000 right now is probably a fair estimate. On the lower end, if you go super cheap with like
leave the tub, refinish it, leave the tile.
And if you're doing that, you can get away with a lot less than that. The difficulty right now, I mean, like this moment in time, is to find somebody to come out to your house to do like a $3,000 to $5,000 bathroom renovation.
Hard.
Really, really difficult.
Because they're busy.
Because they're busy, and that's just not a very big job for them. So like you can do a lot by just like pulling up the toilet, replacing the flooring. Tiling is one that I tell people they can definitely do. It's not that hard.
Especially floor tile. The surround in the tub is one of the harder things I've attempted to do.
Yes.
Because you have to go middle, and you have to back up, and then you have to put it all back. The floor tile, you just lay out prior, and then you just mark it, you remove it, you just set it down.
Yes. And yeah, so like you said, though, I mean, it really, like from that like refresh all the way to like a primary suite gut job, yeah, I mean, it can range from a few $1,000s to $100,000 depending on what you want to do.
Yep.
And makes a big difference, I think. But the reason and people always ask why are bathrooms so expensive, and I say, well, think about it. You've got a demo crew, a framing crew, a sheetrock crew, a painting crew, a trimming crew, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, tile.
For this 5x5.
That's what I'm saying, and they can't all be in there at the same time. So like you've got 10 contractors coming in, and it's a lot.
So the other thing that I think would be important for agents to keep in mind when you're looking at houses, you should be able to tell the difference between a full bathroom remodel and a partial bathroom remodel. Because I would say, like, personally, I think that replacing the toilet, painting the walls, replacing the floors, putting a new vanity in, makes a bathroom look a decent amount nicer.
Difference.
It helps a lot, right? But walking in and going, hey, they just bought a Home Depot stock cabinet and they replaced the vanity. They did a new toilet and they painted the walls and put some sheet vinyl down. This isn't a full renovation. It's important to be able to tell your clients that.
Yeah.
And they will want to know because it makes a big difference on the quality of the finishes. The last thing on here we have to get into are basement remodels. The biggest thing how I want to pull this back so it's pretty specific is just, let's say, unfinished basement. You're going to add a bedroom, a bathroom. You're going to have a family room space, which is a pretty standard basement finish. What does that look like?
I would say right now, I tell people $60 to $80 a square foot is probably pretty fair. If you want to do some more custom stuff, you're pushing up to like 100 to 120 a square foot. So like I had a client that has actually our general contractor doing their basement, and I think it was like $75,000 to $80,000 for like only 650 square feet. But they have like custom built-ins and lockers and benches, and like everything is tiled. There's no vinyl. They did everything super high end. The bathroom's super nice. Like everything they spent a ton of money on. So kind of the sky's the limit. But like you can, if you DIY manage your own basement, you can save a ton of money. I think we did ours for probably like $40 a square foot a few years ago, and we did like massive amount of heated floors, a lot of tile, expensive finishes in there.
Did you guys add a fireplace too?
Added a fireplace,
Projector and surround sound.
I love that. 120 square feet of heated floors too. But yeah, so I think the basements, honestly, I oftentimes think, I don't know what numbers would say, that they do add more than a 1-to-1 cost a lot of the time.
A lot of square footage too. So you change your square footage of the house.
Exactly. And you can get another bedroom and possibly bathroom.
Exactly.
And from a life perspective, like think about your house as a rambler with no finished basement. You'd be like, holy crap, like where are we gonna have our kids play? Same with us, same thing. It's like it's a whole 900 more square feet down there. Like
that you use.
You use it, So I think from a lifestyle perspective, a basement can be like one of the first most important things for especially like a growing family to finish off,
What about adding a gym? How much would that cost?
A lot.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
However, if you're building a new house, it's cheaper to add the gym on then than if the house is existing.
Oh, is that true? Yeah.
It is. It is very expensive. The payback is probably
a lifetime of
1
happiness.
to 3.
A lifetime.
A lifetime of happiness to all of the money.
If you're planning on putting a sport court on the back of your house, you may start to guess that we all love sport courts and are trying to do this. Just know you should plan on just living there for long enough that the cost of the sport court doesn't matter.
I'm not trying to do this. I'm going to
Josh
AJ's house.
Me and AJ are trying to do this. That's all we have for this episode of the Nerdy Agent Podcast. I hope you can get through all of that, and maybe you could even take notes and write all those back, start over. But remember, always be better.